This is a CT cysternography, which is a gold standard for detection of CSF rhinorrhea site of leaks. If the patient is hypersensitive to the contrast, or if there is a recent history of meningitis, you will not do a CT cysternography. Then you'll do a plain CT bone windows with a T2 weighted MRI, which is called as a MR cysternography. So how do we know this is cysternography? Can you see all the CSF spaces are enhanced by the contrast, by the dye? This is the crista galli. This is the right side with the concha bullosa. This is the nasal septum. We are seeing edematous tissue between the nasal septum and the middle turbinate. This is the middle turbinate. It is a concha bullosa of the middle turbinate, and we are seeing a little fluid level over here, or it may be polypoidal mucosa. Plus, we are seeing opacification between the middle turbinate and the septum. If it is a constant leaking CSF, then the CSF precipitates an inflammatory reaction of the mucosa, and therefore you get this particular appearance. Okay, normally there should have been air, but this is all thickened mucosa. Now, can you see the dye that is coming out from here and coming over here? Compare the level, this skull base ka level with this skull base. This seems to be at a little bit of a lower level as compared to this. This is called a gyrus rectus sign, where there is an apparent descent of the frontal gyrus into the nose. It's not actually the brain that is coming into the nose. It is that CSF column which is giving an appearance that that part of the brain is coming into the nose. Okay, so this is the gyrus rectus sign. Can you see this dot over here? That's the dye that is coming into the nose. So this is the medial lamella of the cribriform plate. This is the lateral lamella, and this is the fovea. So nothing is coming in from here. All that is happening is between the middle turbinate and the septum, and this is a medial lamella leak. So left nasal cavity, I am lateralizing the middle turbinate after decongestion, pressing it laterally. That's the middle turbinate. That's the superior turbinate. Then you put your small cottonoids and you decongest, and you see this little bleb which looks like a tear. This is a meningocele. Okay, this is classically what a medial lamella meningocele looks like over here. So you inspect the entire medial lamella from the front to the back. There on occasions maybe more than one meningoceles, and you have to repair all of them at the same time. One will be actively leaking, but there will be outpouchings through other sites also. So make sure that you have inspected the entire medial lamella of the cribriform from front to back. Those are blood vessels on the cribriform. Next step is to cauterize this meningocele. So your regular bipolar forceps is not going to reach them. We have these special gun forceps where it is a very thin thing and the tip is curved, and then there is a thing which we can rotate the tip this way, that way, up, down. You need these special forceps. It's a very narrow area in which you have to operate. So you need this special forceps. If you take your ordinary bipolar, it will close when you go in that area. So it's very difficult to use an ordinary bipolar. You do need these special forceps over the cribriform plate near the dura. You never use monopolar. The heat will spread and you will get a iatrogenic leak. Always use bipolar forceps. So now this meningocele is cauterized. And you make it flush with the skull base bone. Then you cauterize a little proximal. You cauterize a little bit distal. And you make that entire area raw. Because we are now going to encourage Synechiae formation, which is going to be your strength of repair post-operatively. So cauterize it and make the entire cribriform raw. Then you curate out the mucosa medially and laterally to create a bed for your graft to stay inside. Again, this is raw, so our regular curate may not reach there. So here I am using a middle ear curate. And they are nice and sharp. So just the superficial mucosal layer you have to remove without curating the periosteum. So that is along the septum. Create a raw area medially. Same way you create a raw area laterally along the medial surface of the middle turbinate. And this was our cauterized meningocele. Now you take a sliver of fat. Why do you need this fat? It is like this. So if you put your graft, there is going to be a potential space between the skull base and this. So you put a fat and you make it rectangle like this. So now you're getting a rectangle area to put the graft rather than a acute angle where there's going to be a potential dead space. So you just take a thin sliver of fat and put it all along that raw area that you have created. And make sure that it abuts against the skull base. This is a special silver dissector, that's a neurosurgery instrument, and it's very malleable. So you can change it to whatever angle that you need. So you place that sliver of fat over there. And then you take a cottonoid and just gently press so that the whole thing is sticking against the skull base and there is no potential area. Then next what you do is, you take a square piece of fascia lata which we've harvested from the lateral border of the thigh and you put a gel foam in it to make it like a sausage roll. So it will be like this, your fascia lata, and the gel foam will be over here, and with your forceps you're going to grasp it like this. Okay, and then insert it inside. The fascia lata also has a little bit of fat covering it. So that's the gel foam in between. And then because of the gel foam, you are able now to separate both the layers of that fascia. So this goes medially. And that one this goes medially and this goes laterally. Spread it nice and flat anteriorly. Again, press it gently so that it abuts against that fat that you've put as the first layer. And you may leave this gel foam inside. Okay? You try to remove it, the whole thing is going to come out again. So just leave it inside and make sure that it is well abutted. Now I'm putting glue all around. That's tissue glue. Next you put one more layer of gel foam. Now this is where we are putting gel foam because we are wanting adhesions to develop. Gel foam on top of the glue. And then you put a layer of, one more layer of fat. Why do you want this? You've repaired it nicely. Your repair is going to stay well in place. But you put this fat because when you're putting a pack, this fat will act as a buttress. So when you remove the fat, all the gel foam will not stick to it and come out. Because we've put glue, we've put gel foam. If you put the pack and the pack abuts against the gel foam, when you remove the pack, the whole thing is going to come out. So this fat is going to act as an additional buttress for your pack so that your repair remains in place. Then you bring back the turbinate to its anatomical position, and then you put a small piece of merosil which abuts against this fat. This merosil will remain inside for 3 to 4 days. For what we do for all CSF rhinorias is that we, as the anesthetist, to do once they induce the patient, they will do a lumbar puncture and will measure the CSF pressure. If the CSF pressure is more than 21, I think that is the critical thing, then it means it's a high pressure leak and you may be wanting to keep a lumbar drain draining in situ. If it is lesser than that, then we don't put in a lumbar drain.
Ma'am, some people advocate instead of fat and fascia lata, they use the other side nasal, like a septal flap.
Yes.
Can be
Not a flap.
No, the
Free graft.
free
Yes,
graft.
you can use that. But then when you remove the mucosa, that side becomes raw and crusting, and all will happen from that side. But it's okay. Some people, if they've excised the concha bullosa, they peel off the mucosa from the concha bullosa, make it flat like we do for a temporalis fascia, and use that also.
Okay.
Dr. Kirtane doesn't use any fascia at all. He just uses fat and he puts Surgicel on top. Because he feels that once you cauterize and make a raw area and you put the Surgicel, that it is going to heal with synechiae formation and you're not going to get a healing. But we are a little worried and we want an extra thing maybe mentally for ourselves, so therefore we are putting fascia lata for all these patients. You do not cut the middle turbinate for a middle lamellar leak. You need to keep it intact so that your graft sits in that niche and doesn't prolapse out. So typically in the post-operative period following a CSF closure, we are keeping the patient supine with a urinary catheter and complete bed rest for 3 days, 72 hours. After 72 hours, we remove the pack, we prop up the patient, make the patient sit up, make sure there is no leak. If there is no leak, remove the catheter, mobilize the patient, and the next day then or the same day in the evening we can discharge the patient. The patient goes home with salt spray. We do not advise nasal washes following a pituitary surgery or a skull base surgery and following CSF rhinoria leak. So whatever it is, it has to be salt spray. And then you can call them in the post-operative period and do your cleanings. Don't touch this area, don't suck, don't be tempted to look. Leave that area alone and let synechiae form in that area. Whatever suctioning you have to do it down so that the choana remains patent and the patient is able to breathe properly. Any questions on medial lamellar leak closures?
Any medicine on post-op?
Yes. Antibiotics. Antibiotics go on for 7 days, and Otrivin nose drops and salt spray. Okay? And then the post-op care remains the same. You don't need to clean these patients so often because you've not done anything into the sinus. This is a medial lamellar leak. If it is a lateral lamellar leak, then you have to obviously you have identified the site of leak on your scans, and then you have to do a formal FES. You have to do the uncinectomy, open the maxilla, remove the bulla, go up to the skull base, identify the defect, and then the subsequent procedure remains the same. Fat, fascia, glue, gel foam, fat, pack. You have to be able to do a good CSF rhinoria closure to be good FES surgeons. So that when you know that you can repair it well, you're not scared if inadvertently you give an iatrogenic leak. Okay? If you have to be a good parotid surgeon, you need to know how to identify the facial nerve. If you're going to remove the deep lobe, you have to be able to identify the facial nerve. Similarly, in a CSF leak patient, for FES, you have to be able to do a good CSF repair. Only then you are a good endoscopic surgeon. Okay? Any questions?
Any special instruction for using salt spray?
No, nothing.
In pre-op assessment, now, let's say you said CT cysternography is the gold standard. Let's say
and we can do that only if it is actively
leaking. Yes.
If it is an intermittent leak, then you cannot do that. Then you need to do a plain bone window.
Okay.
And identify the actual defect.
Like a plain CT and just to see the bony defects.
Yes.
Okay. Because one of the patient had a delayed response. She had a trauma and then it was a delayed.
So in trauma, anyway you have to conserve for at least a week or so. In a traumatic leak, they may just heal by themselves because of fibrosis, etc. After 7 days or 10 days, if it doesn't heal, then you would want to image.
Okay.
Then in those cases, you may want to do a plain CT with a T2 weighted MRI.
Fat suppression, that T2 weighted fat
T2.
uh-huh.
You don't need to suppress the fat
Fat,
also.
okay.
We are just looking for, there's no fat in the
In
brain.
correct.
So you are doing a regular, highly T2 weighted images.
Okay.
Heavily T2 weighted images, which we call as a MR cysternography. You are not injecting anything into the subarachnoid space.
Okay.
So that is the advantage of a T2 weighted MRI over a CT scan, because you don't, it is non-invasive.
Non-invasive. Yes.
And you can do it in patients who had recent episodes or a history of meningitis in the past.
And when we are keeping the patient conservatively in the post-traumatic cases, what medicine or what precaution we should take?
Just bed rest, avoid straining. We are not giving
Okay.
antibiotics as prophylaxis.
Head of position.
Head up.
15 to 30 degrees.
Head up for all.
Is there any role of Diamox or anything? No?
Some
In post-op traumatic, they are not going to be high pressure leaks. But we are anyway, even in high pressure leaks, we are not giving Diamox, nor are we giving mannitol in these patients. So if it is a high pressure leak, then we are putting leaving in the Laba drains for 2 to 3 days
that takes
to keep that pressure low by the time your repair takes up.
And can you show some videos of epistaxis control for cauterization and all?
Okay, let me see.
Ma'am, do you give drugs to prevent constipation also?
Yes, Kremfin, we are giving that. Okay.
And prior to your Hermiston from the abdomen and facial
No, no.
abscess,
Hi.
Facial,
Same,
yeah.
Same incision. Yeah.
Ma'am, intraoperatively, if the CSF leak happens, so immediately we repair it.
So intraoperatively, you know, because you get that washout sign. So because of that CSF leak, that blood is getting washed out, and then you know that that is the leak. What you do is you keep that in mind. Maybe you may keep a patty there. You finish off the rest of your surgery, and then come back to this area and repair it. Make a point in your op notes and inform the relatives that this has happened. Okay, so that it is not that they are kept in the dark. If any complication happens, whether it is orbital proptosis or CSF, you must inform the relatives about it. Now all this I tell the patients in the consent also. But if I'm doing a surgery for chronic sinusitis per se, you have to mention it so that वो कान पे जाता है. Don't keep on stressing it. हाँ ये भी होगा, ये भी. ये हो सकता है. ये this can happen. This can happen. Normally it doesn't happen and it shouldn't be happening, but it is our duty to inform you about the complications, and hence we are telling you. If you point it towards that, then they will get scared and they will run away. So in brief, just casually mention it to them. See, you show the CT scan. See, this is a thin bone between the nose and this. If your disease is extensive or we are clearing in that area, there's a possibility that the water from the brain will leak into the nose. But please don't worry, we will be repairing it at that time itself and go on to the next thing. So you have done your job of informing them, but you are not stressing on it so as to scare the patient away from the surgery. I do not mention visual loss in cases where it is a routine phase for polyposis and all, unless and until I find a dehiscent optic nerve. Then I will talk about vision loss. If you say anything about vision, the patient is not going to come back to you. Orbital swelling, you may again casually talk about it whilst you are counseling the patient. And you say, okay, ऐसा होता नहीं है, but it is our duty to tell you and inform you about the complication. Therefore, I am informing you. Please don't worry. In good hands, this doesn't happen generally. Any other queries? I'll try and show you epistaxis. Let us finish these videos first.